This is definitely a video your boyfriend will be watching on the toilet. A 2022 BMW M3, practically brand new, crashed directly into Matt's newly purchased house. To recoup some of the damages, after a negotiation with the owner, Matt bought the car for a low price. Although the car has extensive damage, the odometer shows it has only driven 7,000 miles. The plastic film on the floor mats hasn't even been peeled off. Aside from the impact zones, the paint is in perfect condition, and the inline-6 twin-turbo engine under the hood appears to be untouched. He was also very happy with the staggered 19-inch front and 20-inch rear wheels. The price he paid was significantly lower than any online listing. And with this wrecked car, after Matt completely repaired and upgraded it, he would be able to go head-to-head with a Lamborghini Huracan and conquer an incredibly challenging abandoned racetrack. But for now, the car is a complete disaster. The rear side is severely deformed, and Matt has no idea how to even begin fixing it. All the airbags have deployed. The rear wheel is pinned tightly by the crushed bodywork and won't budge. This caused a minor mishap when he was trying to get the car into the workshop. Luckily, the chassis itself wasn't damaged. His plan now is to simply cut away the body panels that are trapping the wheel to free it up, and then see if he can start the engine. This task was initially given to Mrs. Matt. Okay, in the end, he had to do it himself. You can see the structure underneath the panel is also deformed, so he had to keep cutting. Half an hour later, the tire finally had enough room to turn. This car isn't equipped with a dipstick, so there's no way to know the engine's oil level. But it's highly likely that there isn't much oil left because you can see a damaged oil cooler underneath the car. Matt disconnected a hose and found no oil, but when he removed the other one, a small amount dripped out. This was good news. Since the oil cooler was destroyed, he found a suitable hose and connected the inlet and outlet to create a simple loop. Next was the power. The crash had already blown the pyrotechnic fuse, cutting off the electrical supply, so he had to bypass it. In the driver's seat, the fuel gauge showed the tank was still more than half full. To be safe, his dad still added some oil to the engine. It's worth noting that this car has a pedestrian protection system. If a crash is detected by the sensors on the bumper, the hood pops up to protect pedestrians and the engine. But now it's broken, which means another expensive replacement down the line. Ignoring that for now, Matt had his wife get in the car and try to start it. He wasn't expecting much, but to his surprise, it fired up right up on the first try. This was a fantastic turn of events. He then directed his wife to put it in gear, and unbelievably, the car just drove away. Even the smashed taillight was still working. It seems this car is in much better shape than they initially thought. He drove it straight into the garage. The biggest problem with this car is the damage to the rear. Fortunately, the carbon fiber roof was unaffected. The gap in the trunk lid was just due to a bent hinge. Now they needed to get the car on the lift to inspect the chassis. Being a nearly new car, the undercarriage was rust-free. The only visible damage was some bent control arms, but they still needed to measure to see if the frame was bent or twisted. After careful measurement, they found the chassis was still perfectly straight. The worst-case scenario had been avoided. It seemed repairing this car wouldn't be too difficult after all. Matt and the team then began to dismantle the car to get a clear picture of the damage. They started with the most severe area, the rear wheel. From what they could see during disassembly, almost nothing in this section was salvageable. Trying to repair it would take a massive amount of effort because the inner structures were also bent and twisted. The seats and interior also had to be completely removed to see how far the damage had spread. At this point, Matt wasn't sure if it was even repairable. He had to call a professional friend for advice. The answer he got was, anything can be fixed. That was exactly what Matt wanted to hear. So they could now move to the front of the car. He had even managed to piece together some scattered surveillance and video clips to reconstruct how the accident happened. It was just a freak coincidence. He and his dad started by removing the hood. The two side fenders and the bumper were damaged, and the headlights were smashed. Some wiring harnesses were also severed. The front-mounted radiator was the first to take the hit and was unavoidable.
the entire assembly had to come out. To make future work easier, the windshield was also removed. Normally, there should be some usable parts in the radiator assembly, but Matt didn't want the hassle. He had a complete used cooling system ready to go. Swapping the entire thing was the fastest and easiest solution. He and his dad quickly installed it. Besides the tedious process of connecting all the wires and hoses, everything went smoothly. With that done, apart from the missing body panels, the front of the car already looked brand new. However, the used oil cooler didn't come with connecting hoses, so they'd have to wait for those to arrive. He also bought a new crash bar with intact sensors for the hood's pop-up protection system and installed it. Next were the headlights. Although the part numbers on the used headlights didn't match, Matt decided to try them anyway. The result was an instant fail. The lights didn't turn on at all. When he plugged the old broken headlight back in, it lit up immediately. So the 900 pounds he spent was a waste. But where there's a will, there's a way. He decided to combine the two headlights, swapping the damaged parts on the original light with good parts from the used one. He reconnected the power, and this time the light immediately turned on. Matt was amazed at his own cleverness. He did the same for the other side. To get a cooler lighting effect, he also swapped in a new module. Once the adhesive cured, they could be reinstalled. Besides the cooling system and headlights, Matt also sourced the missing front fenders and hood, and miraculously, the sourced panels and hood were the exact same color as the car. The gray on them was just a vinyl wrap, so now he could install them. The new headlight modules were also ready, so those went in at the same time. Turning on the headlights now revealed a yellow glow. The front end was just missing one last piece, the smashed up front bumper. There was no point in trying to repair it. Matt opted for a different style that looked much more aggressive. He connected the sensors and mounted it on the car. Without paint, it looked absolutely wild. No matter what anyone else thought, he loved it. Besides repairs, Matt also made some upgrades in the engine bay, like this new carbon fiber engine brace and new hood hinges. After peeling the wrap off the new hood, it looked brand new. Next came the most difficult part, the rear end. The father-son duo didn't have a solid plan. They just started by trying to pull out the dented areas to get a better idea of which parts could be saved and which had to be cut out. For the next steps, Matt had already called in a professional friend for advice. In the meantime, he could start tidying up the interior and replacing the bent control arms. He also discovered the electronic parking brake was broken and replaced it.
The main issues inside the car were the airbags and seat belts. The violent deployment of the airbags had also damaged the dashboard. This part couldn't be repaired, so the entire dashboard had to be replaced. Matt had already bought a used one for 450 pounds. It even came with an intact airbag, which must have been a shipping mistake, since an airbag alone costs around 700 pounds. A win is a win. He couldn't complain. Now he could start removing the seats and everything else to get enough space to replace all the airbags. For safety-critical components, Matt bought genuine OEM parts. As for the seatbelts, they weren't damaged themselves, just the pretensioners. So he chose to send them out for repair, which also saved him a considerable amount of money. Next, he and his dad tackled the dashboard replacement. This was not an easy process, mainly due to the vast amount of wiring involved. It took them a full day to complete. They also installed the steering wheel airbag. They turned on the power to check, and all the functions were working correctly. The only thing left to install in the interior was the seat belts. The first parts to arrive were the hoses for the oil cooler. He had to drain the oil first, then he could connect the new lines. Matt was bothered by the fact that oil cooler was so exposed. He found a vented skid plate that could effectively protect it without hindering airflow. Next was refilling the engine oil and coolant. Filling the coolant on a 2022 BMW M3 is a bit tricky, and it took the father-son duo a while to get it done. After a day of waiting, Matt's expert help finally arrived. The same friend who had said anything can be fixed. The first thing he did was instruct Matt to cut out all the deformed sections. The inner structure was also partially bent and had to be removed. Finally, the door. And then pretty much everything else was gone. But the car could still drive.
Back in the workshop, he removed the door again to get a better look at the damage. The side skirt also had to come off. Meanwhile, his dad was inside removing the headliner and other trim to prevent any damage during the body repair. They then cut away more panels. The reason for such drastic measures was that Matt had already sourced an entire rear section of a car basically for free. There were some parts on it that Matt didn't need, so he trimmed them off accordingly. Now they could start grafting it onto the car. First was the inner structure. This required careful measurement and perfect alignment. Then came the welding. Under his friend's guidance, Matt completed his first ever weld. Next was the outer body skin. Here, he got incredibly lucky again. He managed to buy an entire side panel of a car. This was a 1 in a million find, because the seller only had this one piece and it had been listed online for a long time with no buyers. Of course, Matt only needed certain sections, so he trimmed off the rest. After placing the panel on the car, the whole thing started to look complete again. He had to temporarily install the door and trunk lid to check the panel gaps and ensure everything was perfectly aligned. Then it was the same process as before, drilling holes and welding. He then sprayed a layer of rust-proof paint and applied seam sealer to all the welded joints. With that, the most difficult part, the rear end damage, was finally repaired. The wiring harnesses that had been removed could now be reconnected. He also installed the rear bumper and it fit perfectly. He put the trunk lid on and the BMW M3 was whole once again. Later, the father-son duo removed the seats again because Matt had ordered a brand new set of bucket seats. The headliner and other trim pieces that had been removed could now be reinstalled. Next came the new windshield. And just then, the repaired seat belts finally arrived and were installed immediately.
Not long after, the new set of seats arrived. They were not cheap. The backs of the seats were all carbon fiber. Matt couldn't wait to install them. The set even included matching door cards, which he also swapped out. The seats were a 100% upgrade. Matt plopped down into one. It felt like the money spent was definitely worth the extra comfort. After that, it was a matter of clearing all the remaining fault codes one by one. Matt was already eager to start the car and take it for a test drive. At this point, aside from the paint, the repair was basically finished. He chose to have the car professionally painted. Soon, the BMW M3 returned with a uniform color. You couldn't see any signs of its previous damage. But Matt wasn't done yet. He had bought many performance-enhancing parts. First, he wasn't satisfied with the car and exhaust. The entire system had to be replaced. He installed a larger diameter Akrapovic exhaust system, which allows exhaust gases to exit more quickly, helping the engine breathe better. After the installation, he started the car. The sound was terrible. After the exhaust, it was the intake's turn. He chose a full carbon fiber velocity stack intake kit, which allows air to be drawn in more quickly. It also included a carbon fiber engine cover, which would completely transform the engine bay. Now, he just had to install it.
Oh yeah, you can do that. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah!
Next, he had to replace the suspension springs. These new springs are height adjustable, allowing for a better driving experience. The final step, naturally, was a trip to his old friend's shop. He had a new set of tires ready for Matt. The wheels were painted yellow to match the headlights. And, as is tradition, they had Matt's name printed on them. He brought the tires back to his workshop. Before installing them, the last parts to arrive, the front splitter and rear wing, needed to be installed. They would provide ample downforce at speed, which might be the key to defeating his old rival, the Lamborghini Huracan. Now the team could finally mount the new wheels. They perfectly complemented the yellow headlights. In Matt's words, the car now felt very sexy. Next, he had to take the car to the dealership to have the new shocks installed and to get a four-wheel alignment. When he left the dealership, the BMW M3 was finally completely finished. To see what it was capable of, Matt took the car to a dynamometer to find out its peak horsepower. As the car roared, Matt couldn't help but cover his ears. The final result did not disappoint. It put down 644 horsepower and 816 newton meters of torque. This completely surpassed the factory specs and gave Matt the confidence he needed to beat the Lamborghini. Soon, he arranged a race with his old rival. Those who have seen my previous videos know that Matt had already lost to this Lamborghini twice, first with his McLaren 720S and then with his Porsche 911 GT3. This time, Matt was out for revenge. His friend, on the other hand, was aiming for a hat trick. Looking at the stats of the two cars, they each have their strengths and weaknesses. It would all come down to driver performance. The Lamborghini went first. My buddy was completely focused, not allowing for the slightest mistake. You can tell he's been practicing. He was very satisfied with his time, which made Matt a bit nervous, but he was still confident in himself. Soon, it was the BMW M3's turn. He gave it his all, trying to hit every apex perfectly. Both drivers completed their runs. Now it was time for the results. The Lamborghini's final time was 1 minute 4.98 seconds. This was his best run ever. And unbelievably, Matt and his BMW M3's final time was 1 minute 4.70 seconds. It was an incredible upset. Matt had finally won, and he couldn't believe it himself.
But his friend wasn't ready to admit defeat. Not long after, he gathered a few more friends, including Matt and his dad, and they all headed to Germany for some fun on the Nürburgring. Then they traveled all the way to Barcelona, Spain. At this point, the competition didn't matter anymore. The real joy was driving their beloved cars with good friends, enjoying the freedom and the thrill of the drive. Their destination was an abandoned, long-forgotten racetrack. Matt was stunned by what he saw. This was one of the most steeply banked racetracks in the world, with a maximum banking angle of 77 degrees. But now, it lay in ruins. The old man said that by going along with these crazy kids, he had gone a little crazy himself. They all went out onto the track to get a feel for it. They were all a bit nervous. The track had been abandoned for a long time, and the surface was bumpy and uneven. There were no guardrails, and going off the edge meant a drop of several dozen meters. This was a true test of both the car's performance and the driver's courage. The cars taking on the track were Matt's BMW M3, his friend's Audi R8, his dad's Ferrari F430, and another friend's Porsche 911 GT3. The competition was about speed and how high they could get on the banked turn. Matt even brought a speed gun. First up was the Porsche 911 GT3. The driver was clearly a bit nervous and took a conservative line. His speed was good, but his height on the bank was average. Next was old Matt's Ferrari F430. The old man was cool as a cucumber, his driving smooth and steady, but his height on the bank was impressive. Indeed, age and experience triumph. He even went for another lap, clearly not having had enough. Matt was speechless. The young guy in the car with him, however, was terrified. Third up was his friend's Audi R8. His performance was solid but unremarkable. Last but not least was Matt and his BMW M3. As the grand finale, he naturally wanted to put up a good time. He went as high as he could. It wasn't until he was up there that he felt how bumpy it was. The result was good height, but his speed suffered a bit. But at least he completed the run. Although winning didn't matter, in the end they still did a simple comparison. Everyone agreed that old Matt was the undisputed winner. As for the rest, everyone had their own opinion, and they didn't dwell on it. It was an absolute blast, even if it meant his brand new carbon fiber splitter was now completely destroyed. But that's an easy fix for later. And that's where we'll end today's video. If you enjoyed this kind of content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We'll see you next time.